I have over 15 years as a transformation specialist, now focusing on the adoption of AI within the organization. My recent project, I'm actually at Side Business School, Oxford, now completing postgraduate in AI for business. My most recent project, I looked at a telecoms organization and I looked at their current state, preparing for the future-proofing them for the improvement of AI within the organization. Funnily, this is where I delved a lot into cybersecurity and AI, and it has brought me over a lot to where I am now, including cybersecurity in everything that I do, because I realized that AI, data, cybersecurity, they're all built on data and therefore data privacy. So they're all built on data and therefore it must be implemented. My background originally was in statistics and economics from way back when. So I did have that base in the area. With that said, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to think about this question as I go through this presentation. If you were to make an AI related decision that is life-threatening, can you comfortably and authoritatively speak to all stakeholders, internal and external, about why you did it and how you did it? So I want you to keep this question in mind, okay? Thank you. Perfect. Let me get into what is explainable AI. It originated in the 1970s and 80s, and it's basically research-based. So everything I'm speaking about right now is research-based, over 40 years of research. And it's a mechanism to show what leaders should cover in reports on AI to build trust and support in society. Basically, what happened is that back in 1970, the leaders, the researchers saw the conundrum that would have been AI going forward, and they sought a research-based method to explain what is AI, what is AI, what it does, how do we communicate the complexities, especially with the black box effect, to all stakeholders, internal and external, in a logical, formative way. And I have developed on that now to align it to international standards going through like the EU AI Act and GDPR, which I was recently trained by Kersey himself in understanding it. So it's aligned to that in somehow, right? And what you must understand is that explainable AI covers the content of what you should report whenever you're speaking to your stakeholders, both internal and external. It doesn't contextualize the language that should be used, because we know that when you're speaking to, say, the board, you speak in a different language, you speak about profitability and so forth. When you're speaking at the operational level, you speak about efficiency. So it doesn't cover the language that should be used. However, it covers the areas that you should speak on, right? And in my presentation, I'll be looking at why AI and ethics is really important in culture and how you should report it, the explainability framework itself, scenario-based exploration, showing how it can be used across 4 different scenarios, a major case study in how it is being used, AI and cybersecurity, as I said, and I just included a slide on the tools that can be used. And I want to take your mind back to this, right? Organizations are actually doing this now. When you hear an open AI gets on the radio and say, hey, this is what our model does. This is how it aligns to ethics. This is how it aligns to transparency. This is how it aligns to culture. What they're doing is trying to explain how the model works in one, building trustworthiness, building integrity, and this aligns to market value. The more trustworthy my model is, the more customers I'm able to get. More secure it is, which goes back to the finances that I can produce from my value. So it make no mistake, this has a financial aspect in the organization as well as a regulatory aspect, because the explainable AI is now aligned to the EU AI Act and other major acts, as you can see coming up. Now, I have looked at the research, and I did prepare a white paper on the Explainable AI framework, and based on all the different research that I've looked at, I've included some of those in my reference list in this presentation, which you'll get, and I've also earlier sent you a copy of the white paper. These are the 6 main areas of explainable AI that I think goes across the board in most of the research: bias and drift detection, explainability obligation, AI governance and observation, transparency and public reporting, right to understand and appeal, boundary setting and safe use. You all have said something in relation to these, because this is a framework that seeks to put everything in one category that you can use and then explain to your stakeholders. I think last night I was looking at a research by Georgetown University when they're looking at the different governance models out there. And there are so many, there are so many. We need one standard, at least a flexible and robust standard that we can use now to report on whatever we're doing. There's so many standards that we have to be assessing them now to see which one is actually covering what areas. If we can identify the most important areas that we need to use to communicate what is happening, then we're good. Or am I doing on time? Okay, so bias and drift detection. Let me do some quick definition. Bias and drift detection really is mapped to the EU AI Act, and it looks at the lens of ongoing monitoring to support unfair patterns, changing behaviors, how data is structured, manipulated, model development, training, guardrails, continuous development. Under that category, we look at how it is explained and how we should bring it across to individuals. We have some tools that align to each category that, if I have time, I'll go through. Number 2 is explainability obligation. This ensures that AI systems we can clearly justify the reasoning behind decisions and outputs. This has to do with chain of thought thinking. Definitely the black box effect. How do we explain this? How do we explain how the model makes the decisions and how those decisions affect us? Number 3, AI and governance oversight. Well, this is clear. This is well articulated out there. You're talking about policy, rules, resource management, how you establish and management boards, committees, how it is implemented within the organization, the models, how AI is developed and used ethically, responsibly. And one thought I would say is that all of this has to go in to play before you start building out the model. Some of these rules must be in place. Vendor management must also be included here. Yes. You also can look at transparency and reporting, which promotes sharing of information about how AI works, the sources, the limitation, documentation. Kersey, I remember you speaking about that. Human oversight, data fitting source. This has to go with how your data is parsed. You're talking about forecasting. If you're looking at relationships, if you're looking at trends, you should be able to explain all of this to your audience. Rights to understand and appeal. You must give your users the ability to question and understand and challenge AI-driven outcomes. Our earlier speaker spoke about this. Giving them the ability to question its truthfulness and be ready to respond. Persons feel better when they're able to reason through things, reason with individuals. It builds trust, it builds understanding, it builds acceptance. Quickly looking at boundary setting and safe use. This defines when, who, where, and how AI applications are used to, how you prevent harm, how it's implemented, the guardrails, the privacy, security. Here we also look at cybersecurity, and breaches and so forth that is taking place. This is where you look at breach cards and, as I said, cybersecurity, and you're going to have a lot of court cases, I can tell you, because we are not looking at how we secure these models. And one way of building trust into our system is to look at how we build the cybersecurity aspect into how we can explain it. So at least when the regulators come in, we have that system in place to report to them how we secure the model, what our plans were, scenario planning, or in some cases, what might happen planning to see how we react to breach guards. So all of this must be included under boundary setting and safeguards. That was a quick look at the explainability framework. Next, we will look at AI and culture. We can agree that AI is shaping culture, right? AI is having an effect on culture because it's changing the world of work. It's changing professions. It's changing jobs. It will make some jobs redundant. It will build new jobs. So it will change how things work. And also then with the changing of the culture itself will also change AI because over a period of time now, you're gonna have certain emerging trends that will influence makers, developers of models to move in certain directions. As with the unstable environment that now exists in the AI world, culture is also shaping AI because we are going to move to where it becomes more profitable and easier. And that, in a sense, now I am being sort of on the defensive because we are not observing certain guardrails. We are not putting in place the proper systems to move fast. We are moving faster than we are putting in the guardrails. One of the main issues that we face really is documentation. Our vendors are not documenting what is happening within the AI system. So yes, AI is shaping culture while the culture is also shaping AI. And we are saying that AI is no longer optional, right? It is shaping culture, business decisions, and it looks at the growth of compliance and the black box and uncertainty. All of this is contained in the whole AI and culture shift. So we can definitely say that if explainability could give leaders and employees a way to understand and trust decision, then turning AI from a black box into a responsible tool could be very important. Would you agree then that it's very important that we are able to communicate with regulators, we are able to communicate to our stakeholders how our models work in a systematic manner, in a controlled manner, and it's in a systematic control manner and in a very familiar manner in terms of keeping this consistency in how we report across organizations. Would that make the world a better place? Okay. Okay, great. Let's look at some scenarios right now. The first scenario is that AI in hiring. We can look no further than the Workday incident, the Workday case where AI rejected a lot of individuals and there's no case in the court. It's more than just diversity and integration. It has to do with how the AI is built. As our past speaker just spoke about, that diversity can be diversified in different environment. It can be different environments. So we definitely need to look at the culture and to see what is happening in each environment, right? But there are certain standards that we can apply to the use of explainable AI in hiring. We can look at the data management classification. We can look at the sourcing of the data, how the data is parsed, how a model is developed. We can look at model drifting in terms of training and actual change over time. We can identify a whole range of hidden factors using our XAI tool, which I gave a summary at the end. So in essence, what you want to do is show transparency and fairness within your organization. You know, looking at the lens of bias and drift detention, this can easily help to solve the application of AI in our hiring process, in the HR process. If we can work to implement some of these standards within the model, while also incorporating the human aspect in it, human in the loop, then we can control some of the biases. Now, I won't say all because some are still evolving, but some of the biases. And we have tools such as Shop and Lime to do ongoing audits, monitoring, and we have fairness tools that we can use. So explainable AI is definitely worth using in the hiring process. So you can see that it's more than just a reporting tool, but also a monitoring and compliance tool. Okay. We are looking at a scenario tool, a loan denial right here. And the lens that we are looking at, it's explainability, obligation, and right to appeal. Right to appeal. We can look no further than a scenario where we have a disabled customer with a decent comparable income, but her or his credit is low marginally to the different categories that we have. The customer complains about discrimination and certain reporting organizations, right? This now demands an explanation because here the reputation of the organization is at risk. Regulatory authorities can come into play. What do we need to do? We need to explain the data, the source policy, the forecast mechanism, how we build our classification groups, in this sense, across the clients. In this sense, it will help to build transparency. Maybe in this case, that customer fell outside of the region. That is, even though they had a high income, they fell outside of the applicable region where they could be given that loan. And being able to do all of this, now you're building trust and reducing the regulatory risk, because if you're able to explain this process to your customer, then a reasonable customer would understand that these are your policies. This is your history, because you're able to show this history over time and be able to understand that this is just a situation that she really didn't qualify, or he didn't really qualify for that loan. We're next looking at another scenario, employee monitoring. I think it was Hernan who spoke about the employee situation, where we can look at boundary setting and safeguards, where we can use AI to identify variables that may be applicable in a model to predict employee retention, rather than constantly surveying the staff, which does exist in certain organizations and which can be considered intrusive. We can look at certain indicators of their performance to actually predict how that employee will perform in the long run. And this will help us and prevent stigma in the organization. We can speak about this to the organization through our governance safeguard mechanism. We can let our external stakeholders know that, hey, we don't watch you, but these are the measures that we follow. These are the KPIs that we follow to really come to a conclusion about any employee, not just yourself. We do have boundary safeguards and ethical standards that we uphold. And now we are speaking about trace modeling signals and defining safe application contexts. So you can use the explainability framework to do all of this. I'm just trying to watch the time to see where I am. This one, public AI and trust. Well, we don't have to get a lot into it because it speaks about governance, really, transparency and governance. Transparency and governance. You need this to cover for reputational and regulatory risk. No doubt you need this, right? A well-documented governance policy, Percy spoke about governance, covering data, model limitations, and other necessary components, along with oversight and accountability. Basically, you need a governance model to ensure trust, accountability, ethical, upholding ethics within your organization. It needs to start from management. It's a top-down effort. It needs to be lived, actually. That's another thing that I say. Ethics and governance need to be lived in the organization. An organization, because will not necessarily follow what is said, but follow how it is led by the leadership. So leadership must take a hold of these standards, embed it in their daily activities, and therefore this will enable organization to better adopt the changes that are being pursued. Are there several cases out there? I want to look at this case. It's really Microsoft and how they use explainability framework. And it shows how explainability can support reporting and responsible use of AI in society, right? In society. Microsoft was not being sued, but they sought to build public trust. This is all reported in the World Economic Forum. You can look up this case, and there are two other cases that support how they use explainable AI. Bias remediation equals bias drift detection. Decision tracing visuals equal explainability obligation. Oversight teams, governance board, boundaries on deployment, safe use, outcome, trust, adoption, and return on investment. So they all map back to the explainable AI, which map back to most of the international standards, particularly EU AI Act. And these outputs generally show how they address the risks and challenges in areas of opacity, drift misuse, unproven value, and other areas. But I want to caution you, we still need to be vigilant and hold them accountable for what they report. You know, they're trying to win the trust, win the favor of the public. We need to be better able to scrutinize them to see what they're doing. I am basically an ethical AI evangelist. So I will look for these things, I'll follow these things, and not just a one-shot effort, but see how they're performing, what they're reporting, see what the public is saying, right? We do have a mechanism now to follow. I do have the white paper to support this presentation. Okay. I added this section to the explainability framework based on my work. As I said, my last major job was looking at an organization that it's a telecoms organization that looked at the customer relations, cybersecurity, AI, and risk. And I realized that compliance and risk management is key to every organization. In a nutshell, we should be able to explain the model security in a clear, concise manner. You look at model protection, the mechanism. You look at risk detection. You look at risk, threat, and the threat response plan, recovery plan, breach management, what could go wrong playbook, which is a scenario. All of this looks at the resilience and trustworthiness of the organization. And this is not just about looking at what is happening. There's a real risk that exists out there. Organizations are being taken to court and they're being fined. The EU AI Act has some serious fines. I mean, you're talking about GDA, the General Data Act, which supports the EU AI Act, looking about how data is transferred. Then you go back to General Data Protection and Regulation Act. It does have some critical areas that you have to work across organization, from AI to data protection to cybersecurity. All of this must be meshed into one. Vendor management, again, is another area that I think Kirsty spoke about it, where your policies, you need to have your governance policies ready to share with your vendors so that when they're building these products, they can implement some of these safeguards within this product. And if that's not done, then you'll be selling yourself short, because at some point you may get a product that is not customer worthy or not something that you're looking for, is lacking in certain areas, you know. So you have to have your ducks in a row based on what you are doing. so you can instruct the vendor, and not just instruct the vendor, but be able to follow along with the vendor to show them where they're going and they're not doing according to the contract. And within this, you need to also have a mechanism to actually, a mechanism that you can use to find the vendor if the product doesn't perform to standard, if they didn't build that standard into that product. There must be some protection for you, the customer, to say that my vendor built my product the way I wanted it, and according to standard and code. You must be the supervisor, the overseer for that product that is being built for your customer, because it's your responsibility to get this done, right? And the regulators will be coming after you, not your vendors. So in a nutshell, explainable AI in cybersecurity means building secure systems that can show their work so we can trust, clarify, and improve them while staying compliant and preparing for what could go wrong. Especially with zero day, which is zero sum, happening right now, where the cyber attackers, they are rampant. We don't know what they'll come with. Your planning must be up to date. You must be able to show your clients, and this involves funding in some cases, that my system is up to par and I can withstand certain attacks without giving away intricate details. You understand? You must be able to explain this to your customers, your board, whatever, so that you can secure funding funding or support or whatever you need to get done. And this will become a very important aspect of product development. All right, these are some quick steps to take. These are some quick steps to take when you're implementing the XAI framework. You should establish governance committees. You should invest in explainability tools. I have a summary sheet here after this one. You should embed framework categories in ESG, compliance, risk management, build risk resilience and trustworthiness within your organization. And with that said, I'm gonna have a closing thought. And I asked you this question at the beginning. If AI made a life-changing decision tomorrow in your organization, would you be able to explain it? This is a quick summary of some of the tools that you can use. Bias detection. When you're at the core goal, detecting unfairness and instability, you have the AI F360 rule, the fear learning tool set, you have the evidently AI tool set. Looking at explainability obligation, this is deliver interpretable and compliant insights, sharp, lime, PDP, interpret, ML. We have a lot of tools that can do that. Governance and oversight, how you establish accountability and auditability. You have Fiddler AI, machine learning flow, ethics board. The human in the loop is very important to what is happening in your organization, because there'll be the counterbalance to see based on culture where the biases exist, where gaps exist. So you do need human in the loop. When you're looking at transparency and public reporting, communicating clearly at the level of the stakeholders. You have model cards, you have fact sheets, you have dashboards, understanding the right to appeal, empower your users with recourse and clarity and what could happen. And this is all enshrined in law, counterfactual reviews, human reviews, looking at and trying to rush through boundary setting and safe use, where you define and enforce safe guardrails, ethical deployments. You can look at risk playbooks, oversight workflows, or what included in your guardrails. So this is just a summary of some of the tools that you can use in your explainability framework when you're applying it at your base level to your organization. And you can also build out a dashboard with some of these tools so that when your management or your leaders need to quickly track and look at some of these areas and report on them, they can quickly look at that dashboard and choose the main ones that if they're weak or they need to cover, then they can cover them in any communication after any event or whatever where they need to speak to them.
Thank you very much, Horatio. With such a name, Horatio Morgan, you cannot go wrong. Thank you very much and also the summary of the tools that are available that can help you, if especially if you are a technical person in the organization, to ensure that all of the different issues like transparency and cross-border and safe use and drifting and bias and so on are done. I have one quick question. And in your AI and cybersecurity, you had data set training. Is it to clean the data or structure the data? What is data set training?
A data set training has to do with the original data that you use. You should be able to speak about it because it has to be a different set of data than the data you use for your operated models. And this is where you also need that security because data set poisoning, that's a real issue out there. If your model, your training model is poisoned, then your operating model will be poisoned and it will give you a different result from what you have been looking at. So how you parse your data, the data that you include, the data that is missing actually is very important, right? What are you looking for in your data? Are you looking for correlation? Are you looking for regression analysis that looks at the direction which variables interact with each other? So when you're speaking about training model, you look at all of those things in relation to what you want to get from the model.
Metadata. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much, Horatio. This brings to an end for today's Corporate Culture Day, or this year's Corporate Culture Day. We have been having these Corporate Culture Days for multiple years. We started with the sustainability component. We went into the algorithms. We talked about the cultural drivers. We embedded it. We integrated it. We talked about the Raki model. And then Dareen took us across the organization with the diverse and how do you start with the board and the frameworks and the charters and so on, and then ultimately implement it. And then we had Horatio talk about the demystification of the AI. Thank you very much, everybody. All of our speakers, fantastic. There are dozens more who will be watching this online when we clean up the recording and send it to them. So thank you very much for your participation. I hope you will join us again sometime in the future. And with that, we conclude the corporate culture today. And keep in touch, and we will send you both the recordings and the presentations from our fantastic speakers. It was such exhilarating to go so much into detail on one subject, and if you get a complete structure and hold of it, my God, you don't have to worry about the culture in the organization. So thank you very much. We appreciated your participation, and we'll see you some other time. Thank you. Goodbye. And